We're doing this because we want answers.
Christine Wells-Wansley and Elmore Wansley say their son Nolan went out for a fun boat trip to Horn Island with a bunch of his high school friends. Late on July 4th, his mom says her heart dropped when she saw one of Nolan's friends calling.
What did he say?
He said, "Hey, Miss Christine, have you seen Nolan or talked to Nolan?" I said, "No, I thought he was with you guys, you know." He's like, "No, nobody's talked to him. We left the island at, I think he said 3 p.m. and he wanted to stay because he was talking to a girl."
That friend's mother, a local judge, posted on Facebook that Nolan told the boys he was going to stay on the island. But the family's attorney, Ben Crump, says another teenager said Nolan was going back with his friends. It's unclear who Nolan was with when he disappeared.
Do you think there's a possibility that your son drowned accidentally?
Honestly, because of the way the stories are just so inconsistent and how that day went, it's just, you know, we can't say for sure. And I don't know how to answer that.
Monday, the college athlete's body was recovered in the water. The location of Nolan's phone now fueling the family's questions. His mother tracked it to a friend's home back on land.
Teenagers love their phones, and two, that's his means of communication. If something happens, you need your phone.
There are hundreds of people on that island. Nobody sees what happened to him. And he stays behind and doesn't ask for his phone.
We asked about this video from the 4th, which many on social media suggest shows an argument involving Nolan.
Do you hear your son in that video?
I can't say yay or nay to that.
Do you see him in the video?
I do not, just because of the way it's shot.
The family's high-profile attorney has repeatedly invoked race.
Do you think that race may be involved in what happened to your son?
I don't want to believe it is, but unfortunately, there's patterns, right?
It's so many things have happened, and so many things have been swept under the rug.
They say they want their son to be remembered as a sweet soul.
He just had a big heart. Like, to really know Nolan, to have him as your friend it was something special.
Do you worry that he might have trusted too much?
Sometimes, yeah. And that was something we always talked to him about.
He always made sure everyone got home. He was the only one who didn't. There is a moment in this case that we keep coming back to. A moment so calculated, so cold, that it stopped our entire team in its tracks. A young man's phone wiped completely clean. Not accidentally. Not by water damage. Deliberately erased. And the people who last saw him alive? They waited nearly 7 hours before they picked up the phone to call for help. 7 hours. Let that sink in. Somewhere off the Mississippi coastline, on a strip of sand that most people couldn't find on a map, 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells took his last breath. Alone. On an island with no drinking water, no shelter, and no way to signal for help. While the people he trusted enough to spend his 4th of July with were already back on the mainland. Already moving on. Already crafting a story. And that story? It has more holes in it than investigators know what to do with. We are going to walk you through every single one of them. The hidden car keys that only appeared once his father refused to leave without answers. The two completely contradictory explanations for why Nolan wasn't on that boat. The girl on the beach whose account dismantles everything his so-called friends claimed happened in those final minutes. And the video already circulating online before anyone could stop it, that captured something his group never once mentioned in their version of events. Something that changes everything. Before we go any further, we have to be straight with you. This case is deeply disturbing. It involves the death of a teenager, a family still fighting for answers, and a web of inconsistencies that points to something far darker than a tragic accident. If you are sensitive to content involving loss of life, potential foul play, or the failure of people to protect someone who trusted them completely, please take a moment before continuing. We do not take this lightly. Nolan was somebody's son, somebody's teammate, somebody's reason to smile, and he deserves to have his story told with the gravity it demands. If you are still here, then you are exactly who this channel exists for. Welcome to Unsolved Files, where we do not let cases go cold, and we do not let victims become footnotes. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe right now and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. Our community spans every corner of the globe and every single comment matters to us, because the more voices demanding answers for Nolan Wells, the louder this case becomes. And loud is exactly what it needs to be. Because what happened between that kitchen and that island should never have happened. And someone out there knows exactly why it did. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, a Gulf Coast community where most people know each other and football is taken seriously. He graduated from Ocean Springs High School in 2025, where he played wide receiver. By the summer of 2026 he was enrolled at Southwest Mississippi Community College, continuing his football career and already thinking ahead. That coming Monday after July 4th weekend, he had fall tryouts on his schedule. His coach at Ocean Springs, Jake Bramlett, spoke publicly about him after his death. Bramlett did not lead with statistics or highlights. He said Nolan's character spoke louder than his accomplishments. That was the consistent picture from everyone who knew him. Humility. Work ethic. The kind of presence that made people around him better without making noise about it. His father, Elmore Wansley, described him on Good Morning America as a silent leader. Not big on words. More action. Someone his teammates looked to without him ever asking for that role. His mother, Christine Wansley, posted on Facebook after his body was found that Nolan was a special soul. That God took his time creating him. That his heart was always oriented toward other people first. The clearest illustration of that came the night before he disappeared. On July 3rd, Nolan cooked dinner for his parents. Baked salmon. Christine had worked a long day and he made sure she had a meal waiting. That night he stayed over at a friend's house, leaving his car there. He planned to head out to Horn Island the next morning with a group of friends to celebrate the 4th of July. Elmore had one rule he repeated to his son throughout his life. If you go out with 5 people, you come back with 5 people. Nolan's answer was always the same. Yes, sir. He meant it every time he said it. Horn Island sits 8 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, near the cities of Ocean Springs and Pascagoula. It is part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, a federally protected stretch of barrier islands running along the coastline. There is no staff out there. No drinking water. No electricity. No shelter. No cell coverage. The only way onto that island and the only way off it is by private boat. On a normal day it draws people looking for open water and undeveloped shoreline. On a holiday weekend like the 4th of July it draws crowds. Dozens of boats anchor offshore. People gather along the beach, particularly at the northwest tip of the island, which is where most of the activity concentrates. That northwest tip is where Nolan's group headed on July 4th, 2026. They launched from a private dock in the Ocean Springs area, confirmed by Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter. According to Ledbetter, Nolan was last seen alive near that northwest tip at approximately 3 p.m., dressed in blue swim trunks and sunglasses. That same northwest tip is also where his body would later be found. According to the group that traveled to Horn Island with Nolan that day, the afternoon started without incident. They were out on the water celebrating the holiday like hundreds of other people anchored along that same stretch of coastline. One of the young men on that boat was Warren Cole. Warren was among Nolan's friends from Ocean Springs. By his account, the last time he saw Nolan on the island was around 3 p.m. At approximately 4:30 p.m., the situation on the boat changed. The vessel began taking on water. The group identified the problem as a malfunction with the bilge pump, the onboard system responsible for removing water that accumulates inside a boat's hull. With the boat compromised, the group made the decision to leave the island. Their account states that Nolan was aware of the situation and chose not to get on the boat. According to the group, he decided to stay behind on the island and planned to return to the mainland later with a separate group of people already out there that day. Sheriff John Ledbetter relayed this account publicly, telling Good Morning America that from what investigators understood, Nolan made that choice himself. Days after the story broke publicly, Warren's mother, Ashley Cole, a sitting Chancery Court judge in Jackson County, posted on Facebook to address the growing speculation surrounding her family. She confirmed Warren was on the boat. She confirmed he last saw Nolan around 3 p.m. She confirmed the group left around 4:30 p.m. due to the bilge pump issue. And she confirmed that in the group's account, Nolan chose to remain on the island voluntarily. Judge Cole also noted that she and Christine Wansley, Nolan's mother, graduated from the same high school. She stated her family mourns Nolan's loss alongside his. That is the group's account, presented as they gave it. The next question is whether the evidence supports it. The group's account rests on a specific sequence. A bilge pump failure around 4:30 p.m. forces a fast departure. Nolan chooses to stay. Everyone gets back to the mainland. That is the version that was put forward from the beginning. But when you check that sequence against independently verified records, the timeline starts to fracture. The United States Coast Guard confirmed it received one call connected to this group on July 4, 2026. That call did not come in at 4:30 p.m. when the group says the emergency happened. It came in at approximately 11 p.m. that night, nearly 7 hours after the boat allegedly started taking on water. The Coast Guard reviewed the call and determined it did not require their assistance. That is the first gap. A genuine marine emergency involving a sinking vessel and a person left behind on a remote island with no water, no shelter, and no way to communicate typically triggers an immediate distress call. Standard maritime protocol makes that call automatic. There was no such call at 4:30 p.m. There was no call for 6.5 hours. The second gap is wider. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department did not receive a formal request for Coast Guard assistance until 12:26 p.m. on July 5th. That is more than 20 hours after Nolan was last seen alive on that island. Christine Wansley did not wait that long. She reported Nolan missing to the Sheriff's Department around midnight going into July 5th. She had already been on Facebook before that, publicly asking if anyone had seen her son. She was not waiting for the group to take action. She was already moving on her own. Ben Crump, the attorney retained by the Wells family, raised the most direct challenge to the group's account in a statement to ABC News. His question was simple. What teenager willingly stays behind on an uninhabited island with no drinking water, no shelter, no way to call anyone, and no phone, because his phone left the island with the group when they departed? That question has not been answered. While the group was back on the mainland and hours were passing without anyone contacting authorities, Christine Wansley was already doing her own tracking. Nolan's phone had 2 apps running that gave his family a window into its location. The first was Life 360, an app that pings a device's GPS position continuously in the background without anyone needing to open it. The second was Snap Map, the location feature inside Snapchat, which only updates when someone actively opens the Snapchat application on that device. Christine checked both. Life 360 showed the phone back on the mainland. Snap Map showed it somewhere different. 2 apps, 2 different location pictures at the same time. The technical reason for that discrepancy is straightforward. Life 360 runs passively and logs position automatically. Snap Map only activates when a person physically opens Snapchat. For both to show different locations simultaneously, someone had to be actively using the phone while it was moving. That is not a glitch. That points to a person in possession of the device. When the phone was eventually returned to Nolan's family, the messages had been deleted. Ben Crump confirmed this publicly. Whatever conversations Nolan had on that phone on July 4th, they were gone before his family could read them. His Snapchat account told the same story. When the family opened it, there was nothing from that day. No photos. No saved content. No record of the holiday at all. People who knew Nolan consistently described him as someone who documented his daily life. His account had been active right up until July 4th. That day it went completely silent. Ben Crump confirmed his team currently holds the phone for independent digital forensic analysis. Once that review is complete, it will be handed over to Mississippi investigators. What those deleted messages contain may be the single most important unanswered question in this entire case. The phone was not the only thing that required effort to recover. Nolan had left his car at a friend's house on the night of July 3rd when he slept over before the trip. After his body was found, Elmore Wansley went to that house to collect the vehicle and the keys. When he asked for the keys, the young men at the house told him they did not know where they were. Elmore did not accept that and he did not leave. He stayed and pushed for a real answer. A few minutes passed. One of the boys made a phone call to someone. Shortly after that call ended, the keys were produced. They had been sitting on top of an Xbox inside the house the entire time. Elmore described this moment publicly at the press conference held in Harlem on July 10th. He said the moment those keys appeared so quickly after he refused to leave, he felt lied to. His exact framing was direct. He said he knew then that the first answer he had been given was not the truth. The keys were inside that house while he was standing there asking for them. Someone in that house knew exactly where they were from the moment he walked through the door. From early on, the group leaned on one detail to explain why Nolan staying behind made sense. They said he had met a young woman on the beach that day named Katie and that he chose to remain on the island to spend more time with her. It was a clean explanation. It gave his decision a reason that sounded personal and voluntary. Katie's account does not support that version. Through people close to her, Katie's side of the story emerged and it directly contradicts what the group described. She and Nolan had already parted ways before he went missing. She had not known him before that day. And according to the account relayed through those close to her, she had no reason to believe he was staying behind for her. She thought the group would take him back on their boat before they left the island. She was not the reason he stayed. And she did not know he had been left there. The second account comes from Javon Williams, one of Nolan's close friends. Williams had tried to board the same boat as Nolan on the morning of July 4th, but the vessel was already at capacity. He made his way to Horn Island on a separate boat, and the two friends met up on the island during the day. Williams placed his last encounter with Nolan sometime after 4 p.m. During that interaction, Nolan pulled Williams aside privately and told him that he loved him. Williams did not describe that moment as unusual at the time. Looking back, it carries a different weight. The third account involves Trace Carter, another friend who had spoken with Nolan on the island that day. Carter asked Nolan to reach out when he made it back to the mainland safely. Nolan told him he would check in that evening. He never did. Two of these three outside accounts show a young man who expected to go home that day. A young man making plans, saying things that people say when they expect to see each other again soon. Only the group's version frames his staying as a relaxed and fully voluntary choice. Those two pictures of the same person on the same afternoon cannot both be accurate. Before the July 10th press conference, a video had already been spreading across social media. Nobody released it officially. It circulated on its own, shared by people who had been following the case online, and it spread fast enough that investigators could not ignore it. The footage was shot from another boat positioned near the northwest tip of Horn Island on July 4th. It shows a stretch of shoreline with groups of people gathered on the beach. Within the footage, observers noted what appeared to be a heated exchange taking place near the water's edge. The audio is rough. Wind cuts through it. But the confrontation visible in the frames was clear enough that it drew immediate attention. At the Harlem press conference on July 10th, Ben Crump addressed the video directly. He told those present that his team had reviewed the footage and that Nolan's voice could be heard in it. Specifically, Crump said Nolan can be heard demanding his phone back. The identification of his voice was not made by Crump's team alone. Other young people who had been present on Horn Island that day listened to the audio and identified the voice as Nolan's. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has not confirmed the footage is authentic. But Sheriff John Ledbetter issued a public request asking anyone who had been on or near the northwest tip of Horn Island on July 4th to come forward with photos, videos, or any first-hand account of an argument, a disturbance, or any unusual activity involving Nolan Wells. That request came before the press conference. Mississippi Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tyndall addressed the public separately, urging people not to reach conclusions ahead of the investigation and warning that speculation circulating online could discourage witnesses from coming forward with information investigators actually need. If you were on Horn Island on July 4th and you have footage, photos, or any account of what you witnessed, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office Criminal Investigations Division can be reached at 228-769-3065. This case is moving in real time. Every update we receive will come straight to this channel the moment it is confirmed. If you are not subscribed to Unsolved Files yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next development on Nolan's case. This investigation is not slowing down and neither are we. On the morning of July 5th, a full search operation launched from the Lake Mars boat launch in Ocean Springs. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department coordinated the effort alongside the U.S. Coast Guard, the Gulf Islands National Seashore, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the National Park Service, and the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer rapid response organization that has assisted in water searches across the Gulf Coast region. Crews covered the island and the surrounding waters by boat, helicopter, and drone. Elmore Wansley did not wait on shore. He went out on a boat that morning alongside Nolan's football coach, covering the water himself while the official search was underway. They found nothing. The search teams found nothing that day either. On the morning of July 6th, just before 8:45 a.m., a National Park Service ranger discovered a body in the water at the northwest tip of Horn Island, the same area where Nolan had last been seen alive 2 days earlier. Nolan's family was notified. They identified him. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind later made the official confirmation using dental records. That proximity detail has not gone unaddressed. Ben Crump and the Wells family raised it publicly. If Nolan's body was in the water at the northwest tip of the island on the morning of July 6th, the question becomes why a search conducted across that same area on July 5th, involving multiple agencies and aerial support, did not locate him. That question has not been answered by investigators. The state medical examiner conducted an autopsy on July 8. Investigators told ABC News they suspect Nolan drowned, but no official cause or manner of death has been released. A toxicology report is part of the findings, and officials say results could take several weeks. The cause of Nolan Xavier Wells' death remains officially undetermined. By July 8, the Wells family had made a decision. They were not going to rely solely on the state of Mississippi to find out what happened to their son. They retained Ben Crump, one of the most prominent civil rights attorneys in the country, to lead an independent investigation running parallel to the official one. Crump's team began conducting their own witness interviews, pursuing their own evidence, and building their own case file separate from anything the Jackson County Sheriff's Department was compiling. The centerpiece of that independent effort was a second autopsy. Nolan's body was flown to Washington, D.C. to be examined by a forensic pathologist with no institutional ties to Mississippi. The funding for that independent autopsy came from Colin Kaepernick, the former NFL quarterback and civil rights activist, who contributed directly toward the cost. Filmmaker and comedian Tyler Perry committed additional funding to support the broader legal effort for the Wells family. On July 10, 2026, the family held a press conference in Harlem, New York. Christine and Elmore Wansley stood alongside Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton and called publicly for a full, transparent, and urgent investigation into Nolan's death. They demanded the timely release of all investigative records and findings. Results from the independent autopsy had been expected that same day but were delayed due to flight disruptions. Crump confirmed the results would be released publicly as soon as his team received them. Crump addressed the racial dimension of the case directly in his statement to ABC News. He said the family has genuine concern about whether Mississippi law enforcement will conduct a fair investigation when white young men may have some level of involvement. He pointed to what he described as a lived experience for many Black Americans in which deaths in highly questionable circumstances get minimized or dismissed. He said his team refused to allow that to happen to Nolan. U.S. Representative Benny Thompson of Mississippi sent his condolences to the family and called publicly for a full, transparent, and timely investigation. The Mississippi chapter of the NAACP issued a formal statement calling on the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and all involved state and federal agencies to pursue every lead without bias or delay. Jackson County NAACP President Curly Clark said the organization is monitoring the investigation closely to ensure no racial discrimination affects how the case is handled, while also asking the public to allow the facts to be established before drawing conclusions. The young men who were on the island with Nolan that day now have legal representation. Crump confirmed his team has not yet interviewed them directly but that contact through their attorneys is planned. At the close of the Harlem press conference, Christine Wansley addressed the protests that had already begun forming in Ocean Springs. She asked anyone planning future demonstrations to keep them peaceful. Her reasoning was simple. Nolan did not like arguments. He would not have wanted that kind of response in his name. She asked people to think about who he was before they acted. As of July 12, 2026, here is exactly where this case stands. What is confirmed? Nolan Xavier Wells, 18 years old, traveled to Horn Island on July 4, 2026 with a group of friends and was last seen alive at approximately 3 p.m. near the northwest tip of the island. The group departed without him at around 4:30 p.m. A Coast Guard call connected to the group came in at approximately 11 p.m. that night. Christine Wansley reported Nolan missing around midnight. His body was discovered on the morning of July 6 in the water at the northwest tip of Horn Island, the same location where he was last seen. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind confirmed his identity using dental records. His phone was returned to his family with messages deleted. His car keys were initially withheld before being produced under pressure. A state autopsy was conducted on July 8. An independent autopsy was conducted in Washington, D.C. with funding from Colin Kaepernick. What is pending? The official cause and manner of death. The state toxicology results, which could take several weeks. The independent autopsy findings, which Crump's team has committed to releasing publicly. The digital forensic analysis of Nolan's phone currently held by Crump's team. Direct interviews with the young men on the island, who are now represented by attorneys. What remains unanswered? What the deleted messages contained. Why the phone showed two different locations simultaneously. Why the body was not located during the July 5 search of the same area. And what actually happened on that island between 3 p.m. and nightfall on July 4. Those questions are what this investigation is still working to answer. This case is not finished. Not by a long stretch. Several developments are moving right now that could fundamentally change what we know about what happened to Nolan Xavier Wells on Horn Island. The independent autopsy results are the most immediate. Ben Crump's team has committed to releasing those findings publicly the moment they are received. A forensic pathologist working outside Mississippi's institutions examined Nolan's body in Washington, D.C. Whatever that examination found, it will either align with the state's suspected drowning conclusion or it will not. Either outcome carries significant weight for the direction this investigation takes next. The digital forensic analysis of Nolan's phone is the second thread. Crump's team currently holds that device. Modern forensic tools can recover deleted messages, reconstruct location data, and pull information from applications even after a user has attempted to erase it. What was on that phone before the messages were removed is still potentially recoverable. If those deleted conversations are restored, they may be the clearest window yet into what was happening between Nolan and the people around him in the hours before he disappeared. The third thread is the witness interviews. The young men who were on that island with Nolan are now represented by attorneys. Crump's team has signaled that direct contact is planned. What those interviews produce, and whether the accounts given to attorneys align with what was told to the sheriff's department, is something this investigation is waiting on. And then there is the video. Law enforcement has asked the public for footage. Authentication is still pending. If that footage is confirmed and the voice identification holds, it places a dispute over Nolan's phone directly on that beach in the minutes before the group departed. Every one of these developments will be covered on this channel the moment verified information becomes available. Not speculation. Not rumor. Confirmed facts as they emerge from the investigation. This is exactly why Unsolved files exist. Cases like this one do not get resolved in a single news cycle. They get resolved because people stay informed, stay engaged, and refuse to let the story go quiet. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Turn on notifications. Because the next video on Nolan's case will contain information that is not public yet, and you will want to be here when it drops. Drop a comment below with the one question about this case you most want answered. The phone. The timeline. The video. The autopsy. Tell us where you land. Our community is already in the comments working through this case and your perspective matters. Nolan Xavier Wells went to that island expecting to come home. His family is still fighting to find out why he didn't. And until there are real answers, this case stays open on Unsolved Files.